Great. Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Lauren Hoyt. I'm the Director of College Counseling. A big welcome to everyone who's come out tonight, our fifth form parents who some are in person, some are streaming this evening, and obviously our fifth form students. I'm very excited to have our distinguished guests this evening here to talk to our students and parents as they start in earnest with the college process. I'm always so appreciative that every year we are able to gather a group of deeply experienced and knowledgeable college admissions professionals who are willing to spend 3 days with us in the dead of winter during the coldest week of the year to share, learn, and connect about the important work of college counseling and college admissions. As we start working together more and get the college process underway, I want to talk a bit about transitions. In this line of work, I often think about moments of transition in life and who we meet and connect with during those pivotal moments. The obvious one here is the transition from being a high school student to a college student, but more importantly, it is a transition to becoming a more independent adult who is defining their goals and paths. As college counselors, we take very seriously and are deeply honored to be involved in a student's life, to work with them and partner with their parents as they make this transition to the beginning of their adulthood. I want to acknowledge what a critical role parents play in this transition as the experts in their children and their greatest supports. Also, while not always visible, admission counselors are also important members of a student's transition, as they are committed to thinking thoughtfully and carefully as they read, learn, and connect with students that are applying to their schools. Smooth transitions, even with their challenges and moments of stress, are possible because of strong relationships that are built and maintained over time. Frequently at Hill, we say the back of each and the strength of all, and we talk about ties that never sever. Students, as you begin on this journey, I urge you to keep front of mind how important your relationships with each other are and with your greatest support, your family. Parents, your student needs loud and unequivocal support right now as they embark on a journey that will include uncertainty, excitement, hope, and all other manner of emotions. In support of both students and parents, please know how committed the college counseling team is at Hill to building a relationship with you to support the student, to provide the best advice and guidance we can. Lastly, it is important to note the important and genuine relationships and partnerships we have with admissions counselors, built on good communication, transparency, and a desire to learn. In all these relationships, it takes work to avoid being transactional and instead really listen, stay curious, and focused on the student. I'm excited for the advisory board to introduce themselves and share pieces of advice as we kick off this evening. After they introduce themselves and share some advice about the process, we're then going to go through a series of frequently asked questions. And I will ask different members of the advisory board to share out. And so without further ado, Krista.
Hi everyone, can you hear me? Yes. Okay, hi everyone, my name is Krista Evans. I serve as Dean of Admissions at Lafayette College. Sorry, what am I doing next? I was worried about the microphone. Piece of advice right away. So I have a couple pieces of advice because I just went through this process as a mom. I have a sophomore in college right now, but I think the one that I will hone in on is that definitely I want you all to kind of think about this process as a journey, and knowing that when you look left and when you look right, your journey is going to be different than your friends. And so I encourage you to not compare yourself to your friends. You might ask them how their college search is going, which schools they're looking at. That is not your journey, that is their journey. And so I encourage you all, again, to take a lot of time to reflect on who you are and what you want in a college. So many times for students in high school, I think you are really thinking about the requirements and things that you need to satisfy, right? There are check boxes that you need to ensure are fulfilled, and that's great. But when you go through this process of, again, looking for a college and finding the right fit for you, you are going to be able to choose, what is that college that I feel I'm going to thrive in best? Again, it's going to be different from your friends. So your list of schools should definitely be different, because you are your own person with your own convictions, your own strengths, your own weaknesses. But you want to find a school that is the best fit for you. The last thing I'll say is just a very quick little story about my son. One of his friends came to me it was actually December of his senior year, and he said, "Mrs. Evans, I don't have my act together." And I was like, "Yeah, you don't. It's time for you to get your act together. Are you ready now?" And he's like, "Yes, I'm really ready now." That is not going to be the case with all of you. Here you are as juniors, really embarking on this incredible process that does take a lot of time, and it does take a lot of intention. Having said that, again, every student does have a little bit of a different journey. Some of you might apply early, some of you might not. Just try not to compare yourselves to the person next to you. Be your own person through this process.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sarah Cohen. I'm an Associate Dean of Admission at the University of Pennsylvania, and I certainly echo everything Krista shared to get us started. And I will say my piece of advice is this, as Ms. Hoyt mentioned, this process really does involve the student at the center taking ownership, taking responsibility for moving the process forward with support from your families, other supporters in your life, your amazing college counseling team. But for the students, this is really, you are in the driver's seat, and you should be in the driver's seat for all parts of the process. The exploration of colleges, the visiting of colleges. One thing that often happens for us in our visitor center is a family might walk in and the parents approach the check-in table and say, "We're here for an information session and a campus tour." And I kind of know that it's not really them that are applying to college, it's their student that's with them, but I never even see the student come up to and say, introduce themselves and check in. So for students, know that this is your process that you are doing in partnership with others around you, but you get to be in the driver's seat thinking about exploring colleges, visiting colleges, working on the parts of your application, which I know we'll get into later this evening. Make sure that your voice is a central voice that is leading all of your other supporters and partners forward. And don't be afraid to step up and practice some of that as you start this exciting process.
Hi everyone, my name is Kevin Mathis. I am the Vice President of Enrollment Management and Dean of Admissions at Bucknell University, about 2.5 hours from here. There are two things that come top of mind for me. The first one is organization. I think a lot about how we all probably have different deadlines in some form or fashion for applications, maybe financial aid paperwork, maybe scholarships. And as you think about building your college list, if you're looking at applying to 6, 8, 10, 12 schools, if everybody's doing something a little different, it can be easy to lose track of when you need to submit things. And what I hate to see is when students miss an opportunity because they didn't pay attention and keep track of what's going on. So however that is, I'm a big fan of Excel or Google Sheets or whatever kind of spreadsheet. I love a good spreadsheet. But if you have your own technique, lean into that heavily and make sure you're paying attention to everything. The other thing I wanted to mention is, as Ms. Hoyt was saying about transitions to college, I recognize that for a family, this is a big launching off point, right? You as a student are going off to college, and then you're kind of launched into adulthood. And one of the things I really want to encourage about the process, particularly as you maybe embark on college visits this summer and the fall, is that don't lose sight of the fact that this is a great opportunity to spend time with family in a way that you might not get to much in the future, and to try to infuse some fun into your college search. And I can give you an example of that. One of my admission officers really, really loves ice cream. And whenever she goes out on her recruitment trips and visit high schools, she will ask your peers at other schools, what's the best ice cream place in this town? And she makes it a point that every day she'll get ice cream somewhere in the region she's recruiting based on student recommendations. So as you think about this search, to try to de-stress it a little bit, as a family, is there something fun you can do? Is it ice cream? Is it pizza? Is it a hike or something in the area? Just something that you can infuse into that journey that makes it a little more fun for you and can take the focus off of the college search for at least, a 10-minute ice cream break.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Justin Mone. I'm the Director of Recruitment at Carnegie Mellon University, other side of the state in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. One piece of advice that I received, unfortunately, long after my college search, was to always take a moment to be where your feet are. And I think that's important advice as you embark on this journey. It's really easy during the college search to be really future thinking. Where am I going to be? What am I going to be doing in 2, 3, 4 years? And it's important to do that work. But don't get so caught up in it that you forget to have those moments and be where your feet are. To take part in the traditions of the next 2 years here at Hill. To spend time with your friends and your family. The things I remember from my time in high school have nothing to do with applying to college. And they're really important to shaping me into who I am today, just as much as my college experience shaped me into who I am today. And I think if you take that moment to find the things that bring you joy in those moments, that can then also inform that college search, right? Which campuses are going to afford you those opportunities, those things that you're enjoying about your day-to-day life here at Hill. So take that minute, remember where you're at, be where your feet are, and enjoy being a fifth former, enjoy being a sixth former.
Hello, everyone. I'm Zach Evans. I'm the Deputy Dean and Director of Admissions at the University of Chicago. And my piece of advice is really all about keeping an open mind as you go through this process and journey. And that starts with your college search and the different schools that are out there that offer different things and majors and locations, and noting that there are so many fantastic institutions and all of them are available for you to research and try to understand if they're a great fit for you. And then it also goes into academic interests, which you may have some idea or no idea, and some schools are better for students who know or don't know, but also career paths. If you think you might want to do something someday in any particular job or industry, if you ask folks that are in those jobs what they majored in college, you might find 10 different answers for the same type of job. So there's not a one major equals one career. And for many of our institutions, we're going to support students in our career paths and with internships and whatnot to get you where you need to be. But it means you have flexibility to take on academics that may not be that path that you think you have to take. And having been here for a couple of days, and some of us have done this before, we've got to sit in on your classes, see the breadth of opportunity you have, and the teachers here who are hopefully getting you excited about subject areas that you might even want to dive deeper into in college. So if that's you, if you've got something you want to dive into, please go for it and keep an open mind.
Awesome. Thank you. So the first question I want to ask the panelists is to talk about what and define what holistic admissions means. We frequently hear about holistic admissions, and you might hear about it kind of in the news as people are talking about different aspects of college admissions in this country, and it can be a little bit of a murky or complex term. And so on the panel, I'm going to ask Sarah from Penn and Justin from CMU to talk about it because they have slightly different approaches of how they work in those offices.
Sure, so I will get us started. And it's a great question to start with because I'm sure that as we progress through our conversation, we will reference back to the idea of holistic admissions. So it's good to sort of set the table to start. So in short, holistic admissions means that there are multiple different components that go into the application review process and that ultimately will contribute to the final decision that is made. That means that it's not only about a transcript, only about standardized test scores, only about a recommendation letter, only about a student's involvements, only about an essay. It's all of those factors are taken together, and each of them contribute a way of knowing a fuller picture of a student who is applied to our school. So we look at the pieces of the application that help us know your experience as a student and your time in the classroom. That largely comes through the transcript, which helps us know the courses that you've taken, the level of rigor you have pursued amidst what's been available to you and what is available to you at Hill, and the grades that you've earned in those classes. For schools that may require testing or have some variation of a testing requirement, that also comes into play, but less than you would probably think. Oftentimes, standardized testing is merely sort of kind of runs parallel to the other components of an application and is usually not going to be a major tipping factor one way or the other. But then we also look, in addition to those sort of academic pieces, we also are interested in the way that you have spent your time and the contribution that you may make in your community and your space. And that largely comes through what you tell us that you've been involved in or how you spend your time. We look at the recommendation letters that come in from teachers and college counselors who know you well and help to kind of paint a fuller picture of your citizenship as a member of the school community, as a classmate, as a roommate, as a teammate, all those identities that we know that you hold and you'll continue to bring forward. The essays are important. We were talking about essays last night with some 5th and 6th formers and English faculty. Both your personal essay and any supplemental essays that may be required that allow you to speak a little bit more specifically about your interest in a particular school. So I just named sort of some of the key pieces of an application that you'll be asked to fill out, and do know that all of those are important. The idea of a holistic review is that we are looking at that full picture. We are looking at each of those components that helps us to understand who you are as a student. So it's really about the whole, and each is contributing to how we review applications and make our decision.
I think that's an amazing overview. So I don't want to rehash kind of the same commentary there, but a couple of quick things to add. We're all going to do this a little differently. That will reflect our own institutions and our institutional priorities and resources. So you might find some institutions conduct this holistic review through a really traditional committee approach, where there might be somebody who presents your file out to a group of evaluators. It might be, there's a process called CBE, a committee-based evaluation, where 2 readers are sitting down together. It might be a file review process where an individual is reading and scoring a file independently and then passing it to another evaluator. There's not one process, and I think that is, again, really important to know. The institutional context, it also means a lot, and again, informs the way we'll go about this. An illustration from CMU that I think can be really salient is that we do not read applications geographically. Students at Carnegie Mellon enroll directly in one of our 6 colleges, so our committees are college-based. If you are applying to engineering and your friend is applying to business, it doesn't matter that you're both Hill students, you're going to different committees at Carnegie Mellon, because we have folks that specialize in understanding the context of our engineering college, and other folks that specialize in understanding the context of our business college. That's not going to be the case everywhere. We're again, all doing this a little bit differently. And then finally, when it comes to those institutional needs, that factors into holistic review as well. It could be that our star point guard is transferring, and we're going to prioritize finding a point guard for the basketball team. It could be that the oboist in the orchestra is graduating, and we know we need to fill that seat. We could have just launched a brand new STEM major, and we're looking for students with that specific interest. So there are also aspects of that holistic review that if we are looking for students that will contribute to very specific needs on our campuses.
And maybe, Kevin, can you talk about what it looks like when a college is doing that holistic review, but region by region?
Sure. So I'll use Hill as the example. So my team member, Chrissy Finley, who's been at Bucknell in admissions for about 20 years or so, has come to Hill, I think, that whole time. So the beauty for you all as applicants to a place like mine is that, and to have somebody with the longevity Chrissy does, is she knows Hill really well. So when we think about her reading the applications, she's very familiar with your curriculum, what the school life is like here, and then she is the primary reader of all the applications from Hill. And we work, I'm actually kind of like a combination of Sarah and Justin in that we read holistically by region, but Bucknell also admits by college. So we're trying to do both, where we understand our recruiters who read your applications understand your schools really well, but then they're also trying to find that match with, how many of those students are looking at College of Arts and Sciences, engineering and management, because those are different applicant pools. So we understand the context of your school, but also are understanding the context of each of the colleges that folks are applying to.
Yeah, and one thing to note in terms of holistic admissions is that as Justin talked about some of those institutional priorities, there could be lots and lots of different institutional priorities. They are largely unknown outside of the institution, right? We are not going to keep track of what's happening with the Nova West at CNU. And so that may influence and impact your process, but we can't control for it, and you can't control for it. So one piece that's already been talked about or mentioned that I'd like to dig in a little bit deeper is standardized testing, as we're in sort of test optional mystery land, where there are lots of different processes and understandings and desires around testing. So Zach, can you start us off with talking about how Chicago approaches testing?
Yeah, absolutely. So what's happening with standardized testing across the nation, it's constantly shifting in terms of what school policies are. After many went test optional a few years ago, some have returned to testing, some have some test flexible or different policies. So there's definitely a few definitions to know. But at UChicago, we are test optional, which means a student can submit an ACT or SAT, but they do not have to be considered. We also practice what's called no harm testing. And that's where we only use a test score if it confirms or improves the student's academic standing in our academic review. And for us, about a third of our students come in without testing. No harm is a little bit newer for us. We've been test optional since 2018. But there are well over 1,000 schools that have test optional policies nationwide. It's been going on since the 60s, I think, was the first school, right? So you'll find that there's a breadth of colleges and universities that have test optional policies. As you're going through your own journey and working with your process here, you will likely and should, I believe, take an ACT or SAT, noting that when you build your college list, you want to make sure you have that in hand so that if the school's test optional, you have the choice of whether or not you'd like to submit it to that college or university. But that's how we do it in Chicago.
Okay. And Penn, you returned to testing this year. Do you want to talk about that decision?
Sure, yes, we did. So we did return to requiring the SAT or the ACT starting this current application cycle that we're in right now. We also have an option for a testing waiver if taking the standardized tests is a hardship for students for any reason. We do have a waiver that students can elect, and that will fulfill the requirement. But we do have the testing requirement again. And I would just echo what we talked about earlier when I say that testing usually plays a smaller role in the evaluation process than you all may think. I know it can take up a lot of your time and energy in preparing and practicing and actually taking the tests, and it is a good piece of advice to go through that process and try and do your best with it, because in your college search process you very likely may have schools on your list where you will need to submit those tests. But please do know that it is taken into consideration among the other pieces of your application, and it is one part of the whole.
with the exception of maybe, 1 to 5 of you, you are in the process of taking standardized tests. You're not done with your testing. And it is a process. It's something that your college counselors really want to work with you on and provide advice as you start to take standardized tests and think about when and how often I want to retest, and then what testing do I want to provide colleges once I'm applying. That's where we can be really helpful, because most students, it's a variety of responses. If you're applying to 10 schools, there might be 6 schools that we say, yes, you should submit your testing. There might be 4 schools where we say, no, it's not going to benefit you in this process. And where test optional admissions is right now, there are a variety of responses, and colleges are communicating with us if they want to see testing, that yes, this testing might seem like it's below our averages, but we find it helpful to see because maybe we're trying to evaluate math readiness. And then there are other colleges where their philosophy around test optional is a little bit unique, and we understand that because we've been talking to them about it. It can provide you good advice on that. So it's one of those things where we just really want to work individually, and it's going to be a very personalized response as to whether or not you continue to test, how often you test, and how you use that testing. I want to get back to an element of that holistic admissions process where when you're reading by region, oftentimes students are concerned about if there are multiple students in the sixth form class applying to the same college or university, to what extent are they in competition with one another? Will a college accept more than one Hill student? How does that work? And sometimes students go as far as trying to suss out, well, this student is applying their ED and I can't do that. So Kristen, maybe you start us off with responding to that.
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to. At Lafayette, we definitely admit more than one Hill student. There have been years where we've had even upwards of a dozen applicants. Sometimes half of those admitted, sometimes fewer than that. It depends, and you'll hear that a lot from college admissions folks, maybe unfortunately. I know that can sometimes be frustrating, right? Every school is in fact different, but one of my first comments and my piece of advice to you was, again, your list should look different, right? There's a recent article that just came out in our profession where one of our colleagues in admissions mentions the echo chamber, right? If you're all in the same echo chamber and you're just bouncing the exact same ideas off of one another, again, is that really true to who you are? And so again, your lists are going to look different, and I don't want you to stress or feel as though you need to strategize in applying to schools that are different just because they're different, but also, again, are they true to who you are? Something that Sarah mentioned too about the application itself. When we are reading holistically, one of the things that we're looking at is how do your values or the things that we learn about you align with our values and with our institution. And so when we're reading your essay, when we're getting to know you during an interview, when you visit campus, all of those things, right, are making up this holistic process, but it really speaks to how you should build your list. Again, working with your college counselors, we really can't say that enough. We are partners with your college counselors. We do not hesitate to pick up the phone. They do not hesitate to pick up the phone to call us. All in this effort to truly support you and to find that fit, right? Everyone talks about that college fit, and what does that mean? Chances are, students, you would probably fit at many different institutions, right? There's not just one school that is the only place where you will fit. But where will you thrive? Where will you continue to grow? What is the school that is going to have those values that align with yours? Again, that list building I think is really, really important, but maybe stress a little bit less, again, about what your peers are doing, or a little bit less about how many students each institution is going to accept from Hill. And again, think back to that reflection on why you're applying to certain schools.
I'm going to jump off of a point Crystal made when she said it depends. Let's just give a couple examples of why it can be wonky year to year. So, thinking about an applicant pool, and you can use Bucknell as an example and other schools like us where we have multiple colleges. You might hear one year that, oh, Bucknell's applications increased by X%. But because we admit by college, one of our colleges could actually be down in applications, while one saw a huge increase. So that year, it's like, oh, well, we're going to get more selective over here, but we're going to maintain where we've been with this other college. So we don't always know what's coming either. So it's beyond Hill, it's the entire applicant pool and how does it shape and who shows up in our pool each year. And to Justin's point about institutional priorities, sometimes you're looking for something and there's not much of it in your pool. And other years you have an abundance of it. So I think when you're trying to look at maybe the history and, you know, what's happening at Hill, how many are they taking? And we also don't know what's happening with you all. Again, using me as the example, one year we could have 10 Hill students applying to one of the 3 colleges, and the next year it could be 15, but it's spread out among all 3 of our colleges, and then more people get in one year. So that's I think sometimes the challenge with that comparison piece is that you don't always know what's happening on our end, and as much as we communicate to your councils, we don't always know what's happening until the app deadlines hit. So we can visit in the fall and give your council heads up, this is what we think, and then 2 months later, be like, well, the apps came in a lot different than we thought, so now this is how it's going to shake out this year. So I think that's the other thing to keep in mind is that you have to pop your Hill bubble a little bit and think much bigger about how our pools take shape and how it changes how we make decisions based on who shows up in our pool each year.
So I think for CMU, the college level review is really important to understanding that. As Kevin was saying, for us, the very, very first time that anybody in our committee usually looks at a roster by a high school is after we finalized our decisions. You know, I'm maybe getting ready because I know I'm going to be talking to Mr. Ash, and I want to have a sense of how did things go down at Hill, because I'm going to be having a conversation with a colleague, with a friend at Hill. But there may not be anybody on our team that in making decisions is looking at that whole roster. And there are going to be other colleges where that is certainly happening. But there can be a lot of noise year to year for sure. I think what's most important to know is that what we're all striving to do is look at you in the context of your community. That's why understanding your community is important, not because we have a quota for your community that we're being asked to fill, but because we're being asked to understand your community so that we can understand your application with sensitivity to the opportunities that have been before you, to the culture that has helped to develop you into the student, the person who is applying to our institution.
Great, thank you. So when we return from winter long weekend, we are heading right into course selection, and we'll spend about 3 weeks where you will meet with your advisors, you'll meet with your college counselor, you'll talk to teachers, and be thoughtful about what courses you're taking. In those conversations, we will be talking about where you're finding and seeking balance and where you are seeking challenge. In the conversation, it's not unusual that a student, a parent will ask us, is it better for me to challenge myself, or is it better to take the easier course and get the A? So I'm going to ask a couple panelists this, but I also am going to ask them if in their review, are there specific courses that they're looking for that indicate a competitive candidate? And how does that change when they're reviewing by academic program or major? So Sarah, you want to take the floor?
Or I'll start. So two-part question. I'll try to answer them both. So the question of do I take the harder class and maybe get a B, or do I take maybe not as hard of a class and think I can get an A? Which one do I choose? That is the question that has been posed to admissions folk for probably as long as the question existed. And we don't really give a very satisfying answer to the question, which is we want you to push to challenge yourself with a level of rigor that's appropriate for you. And of course, we want to see you do the best you can in that class. Because ultimately, our jobs are to enroll a class of students at our institution, which is what we are charged with doing, of students that are going to be prepared to be successful in the environment on our institutions. We do not want to be setting anyone up to fail, and our jobs as admissions professionals is to evaluate the information that we have at our disposal in order to make an informed decision that is ultimately going to be in the student's best interest and also meet our institution's interests as well. So as academic institutions, we are looking for students who have demonstrated strong academic performance in their high schools and who have done well in their coursework that has prepared them to succeed in the academic environment they will enter into. So that can look different depending on the school that you're applying to. What that conversation looks different based upon schools, based upon particular programs, areas of interest. We have 4 undergraduate schools at Penn. We have our College of Arts and Sciences, we have a School of Nursing, a School of Engineering, and a School of Business. And when you apply to Penn on the application, you have to indicate which of the 4 schools. We also have coordinated dual degree programs. Which of those schools or programs you are applying to, and your application is reviewed in the context, in the lens of the school that you are applying to. And the reason we do that is because the curriculums are different, and the preparation that we look for is different based upon the skills and knowledge that you would need to rely upon to enter and then be successful in those programs. So for our School of Nursing, we're looking for students who have had a strong preparation in the sciences, biology, chemistry, to enter into a health sciences curriculum, as well as mathematics, but statistics is really helpful because if you think about the skills that a nurse may be relying upon, that's in reading charts, reading graphs, drawing up medications, being able to understand that. So those are some of the key kind of curricular recommendations that we look for in terms of strong preparation for the nursing school. Now, if we move over to our School of Engineering, we're going to be talking about calculus and physics as the building blocks for a successful engineering preparation. Those are the sort of key calculus and physics and the hard sciences in general to enter into a very quantitatively focused engineering curriculum. Thinking about our business school, we look for demonstrated impact in leadership, and we also look for a strong foundation in mathematics, particularly calculus. And then we get to the College of Arts and Sciences, which is really the liberal arts and sciences. We are looking for a well-rounded high school preparation across each of what we consider to be the kind of 5 core academic areas of study, which is going to give you a strong foundation there. So that's what it looks like at Penn, and we can each sort of share what it might look like for us based upon the academic program that our schools offer and how our evaluation process is based around that. And the last thing I want to say is, as you heard me name kind of each of those 4 schools and the courses that are important, if you are someone that knows you do not enjoy math, which is absolutely okay. I was a person who would have put myself in that category. I would say engineering may not be the field that you may thrive and be your best self in, and that's okay. It's also okay to know yourself, know what you like, know what you don't like, and use that to help you also think through what are your interests. It's hard when we find students who are maybe trying to put themselves in a box because they feel that they should do that or there's an expectation, but it's really not who they are. So those can also be, important kind of clues and cues to pay attention to as you're thinking about yourself as well.
Something I want to add, because we've had a few examples of how schools at different colleges might be considering students applying. At the University of Chicago, and certainly there are other schools like us, that every single major we have is under one umbrella. So when a student applies to the University of Chicago, regardless of the major, it's all in the same office. We're not thinking about it by school. But we do ask students what their top 3 interests are, and we do make connections between curriculum and preparation and what that field might be. And certainly, in listening to what Sarah's saying there and agree on all fronts and noting that although everything's under the same umbrella, if you are looking at, we have molecular engineering or we have strong math programs, and that's probably where we're going to be looking the most closely is at some of that preparation, having some expectations, and certainly calculus does come up a lot for students that are interested in those highly quantitative fields as not just a benchmark, but something that also our faculty are expecting of us when we're bringing students in so that they're at an appropriate level to jump right in and be successful and be able to complete the major on time.
One last quick note I'd like to add. For anyone out there who's studying economics, the law of diminishing returns is real here, and there are opportunity costs here. So a lot of times when I'm getting this question, it's, maybe a student wants to go to a STEM field and they're saying, I'm already taking really rigorous math and a really rigorous science and a really rigorous English course, and I'm debating, do I need to take the most rigorous history course as well? Maybe because you enjoy it, but if your opportunity cost on that is, I'm not going to have time to be a part of the theater, and I love the theater, there's a law of diminishing returns in play that extra really rigorous class might not move the needle for the admission committee nearly as much as that great essay about the theater or that strong recommendation from your theater director. So you also, I think, need to be thoughtful about not overcommitting yourself to academic rigor alone, because there are so many other ways that you need to spend your time. And once you've kind of demonstrated that benchmark of appropriate rigor in related fields, there might not be a whole lot more that you're going to do to impress us in terms of which courses you're selecting.
Yeah, and I also think about that with testing, right? That there's diminishing returns that, once you get to a certain range, taking it a 4th time to get 10 or 20 more points is not worth, the juice is not worth the squeeze, right? Yeah. So continuing on academic majors, can you guys talk about what are the hot majors that you're seeing right now? Also, conversely, what are some majors that have been hot that you're seeing kind of a shift in, and what trends, just generally what trends you're seeing there?
Happy to start. Economics continues to be our most popular major at Lafayette. We offer the liberal arts and engineering. And so mechanical engineering is definitely popular as well. The STEM fields continue to be popular. The social sciences actually continue to be popular as well. Psychology is typically one of our top 3 majors. Sociology, anthropology, some others in the social sciences as well. So those I would say were the hottest majors, at least this year, the ones that we continue to hear. I think the common theme that we'll all report and that we're hearing kind of nationwide, many of our friends at other institutions are talking about computer science and the dip that it is experiencing. Now, having said that, I was actually on a counselor advisory call last week with an institution, and they actually have a combined computer science and business program. And they said that the numbers for that particular program, the application numbers were through the roof. And so I thought that was really interesting. And I couldn't say who it was. It was the University of Delaware. And she was commenting and saying that what Delaware is thinking of doing is actually creating or thinking of creating some additional interdisciplinary programs like that. That surge in computer science and business was really intriguing to them, and seeing the intense dip that they were seeing in computer science alone was enough to kind of inspire them to start thinking about an interdisciplinarity and, again, other programs at the institution that they might combine with computer science. So I think that's the hot topic right now in higher ed, in enrollment is just how AI is changing the landscape of everything that we do, and how it's changing students' interests academically as well.
So I would, Krista mentioned Business for Another School. That's what we're seeing as being incredibly popular right now at Bucknell is our College of Management, as well as mechanical, same things, mechanical, psychology, economics, political science. I would add, I think, for a couple of years now, the other conversation about what's been cooling, unfortunately, is the humanities. Things like languages and English and history. And what's disappointing about that on our end is that when we look at our graduate outcomes at a place like Bucknell, our students that major in those things do incredibly well for themselves. And I think sometimes what we're seeing right now nationally is that the perceptions that some of those degrees don't lead to specific outcomes that lead to careers. And what we see from a liberal arts standpoint is that students who study those things have great critical thinking skills, writing skills, speaking, and they're able to enter the workforce in a lot of different areas and be very successful. And they go into a lot of different directions. I know one of our graduation speakers at Bucknell was an English major who is noted as one of the best venture capitalists in Silicon Valley. So talk about total 180 there. But I think that's the thing that we're looking at is that, nationally there just seems to be this continued decline in the humanities, which is a great field to study. I think if you're somebody who loves that, I would really keep going on that path.
Yeah, and then there are many ways to end up in the same spot, right? That you don't have to major in business to work in business. That you can pursue lots of different things within college, and that can be separate from the career path, right? All right, so we're going to shift attention to the things that students should be doing or how they should approach certain things. So the first question in that vein is what should students be doing this summer? Any advice around that? As we talk about course selection, as you'll meet individually with your college counselor, if they haven't already, they will be talking to you about your summer plans and offering advice and suggestions in that area.
I'll kick us off because I know that there's so many colleges out there that might offer summer programs that you can do on our campuses, and so that's something that you may choose to explore. It's not necessarily an expectation or requirement. I will note at the University of Chicago, we do have, for students who complete a summer program, they can apply slightly earlier in our round. So I know that exists in terms of understanding me throwing out summer programs to start. And yet, what I find when I've spoken to students about summer programs and we see students, whether they do them with us or elsewhere, it is a great way to experience a college campus, get to know schools well, and then learn from faculty, often being able to take courses and sometimes for grades, potentially for credit. And so that's one thing that you might consider, but at the same time, there are so many other ways that you might engage with your time over the summer. And sometimes it's travel, something simple, or working, service, there's great things. But I wouldn't say there's one perfect summer or thing that we expect you to do, or that comes with kind of anything on the application, is that if something's not there, we're not saying, well, this is missing. We're looking at what you are bringing to the table in terms of the experiences you choose to take on both during the school year and during the summer, and how that helps us understand you, your interests, and how you might contribute to our campus. So, plenty of things.
Something you alluded to there is there not being the perfect summer. And I think there's sometimes this myth that there's like this power rankings in the admission office of this summer experience, if I did research, that is going to look better than if I did an internship, and that's going to look better than if I did, and so on and so forth. And the reality is, a big part of our job is helping to craft a community that is going to bring different talents, different passions, and different experiences. And that diversity of experience within the community, when it bounces off of each other, that's where really cool things start to happen. So I'm a big baseball fan. Humor me a quick baseball analogy. It's like putting together a good ball team, right? You don't want all pitchers. You need some hitters that are going to get on base. You need power hitters that are going to drive them in. You need a strong defense. You can't say that the only thing that matters is pitching. Similarly, we can't say that the only thing that matters in the summer is research or is an internship. I would say follow your passions. You should be doing something over the summer that helps you to enrich yourself or invest in others, dedicating some meaningful time to something. But that's going to be unique to each and every one of you. If that's a summer camp that you attended as a kid that you want to volunteer at, amazing. If that's an artistic opportunity, great. If that's athletics, fantastic. Just do something that you're going to enjoy and is going to enrich you, and know that we're looking for all those different things in our communities.
I'll also just add that a summer job is just fine as well. We have a lot of students that write their essays about summer jobs and how impactful or how meaningful it was. An experience that they had while at work, actually having a supervisor, maybe even working up in the job that you have to then supervise someone else. The diversity of experiences that you have at that job, the people that you meet, the customer service. I mean, we could go on and on, right? A part-time job, again, can be really, really impactful. So I would just add that too is also a great experience for you to learn more about yourself, for you to learn maybe what your passions are not, right? Sometimes I've had students say to me, wow, this job was really, really hard. I don't want to have to do this again. I instead want to funnel my energies into something else. So all of these experiences that were just mentioned, just like Justin said, are ways in which you can find that growth, find that passion, maybe also find something that you're not passionate about, and that's okay too, because that represents that growth.
Yeah, and to build on that, a piece that's really important in working with your college counselor is communicating what that experience was, what you got out of it, where you found meaning, what you didn't like, right? There are many times that conversations with a student about either a summer experience, a co-curricular experience, something that doesn't seem like super what we might think of as like super important to the college process, actually is packed full of meaning and helps us understand you better. And then when you are going to write, there might be a supplemental question, or it might be your essay where there was a kernel of meaning that you shared with us that we really will encourage you to expand upon. And it will help sort of illuminate your thinking, illuminate what was important to you, why you made the choices that you made. And it allows the admissions counselor to get to know you so much better and to find out where you fit in the puzzle of who all they're looking at to accept. All right, so as you are going out to visit colleges, we always encourage you to take advantage of our very long breaks. We have a very long spring break. Many of you are already talking to us about visiting colleges, which is wonderful, and we want to know where you visit and what you thought of it after you come back. But let me ask Kevin. If you could speak more, you already gave us some good tidbits, and I will say the best ice cream near a college campus or on a college campus is at Penn State, by far, right? But if you can, I see that you disagree with me on that, right?
It's only because 10 minutes from Bucknell, a Mennonite family opened a creamery. And I will tell you, like, heavy cream ice cream with, like, it's real good.
I'll have to check that out.
It's really nice. Actually, we contracted them. It's in our cafe now on campus, so we were smart. So advice for the campus visit. I really like Sarah's advice as a student to check in for your visit. I think that's one of the things that we love to see. I would say before you go, look at all the different opportunities in terms of how you can engage with the campus. We're all going to offer usually some sort of information session and tour, but there are options to maybe sit in on a class, have lunch with a student, maybe there's opportunities to have some one-on-one faculty, and maybe you're not doing all those things in one visit. It's the basics first, and then as your college list starts to slim down and you're trying to think about, like, really what are my top choices, maybe a revisit for more in-depth experiences is what makes sense. The other thing I think about a lot for you as students, and I think for the parents and guardians that are here online, is somebody considers potentially splitting up on the tour. So if there are multiple tour guides, maybe you as the student go with one and your family goes with another so that you can have separate experiences and get different perspectives. And then you can come together and talk about what you heard about, because I think that can be something really healthy. Maybe you as a student feel more comfortable asking some questions that you don't want your family to hear, or you don't want your family to embarrass you. So you're gonna let them go ask their questions without you there. That can be a positive too. And then the other piece of advice I've heard that I think is really good as when you think about visiting with the family is, and I'm directing this towards the parents and guardians, is to let your student react first. So when you think about getting in the car, going to the next visit or to the next location, inquire with your student, what did you think? What did you like? Is there anything you didn't like? Because it lets them, again, be that driver and kind of give their reaction before you jump in with your observations and maybe bias. If they loved it and you're like, this is terrible, you're not coming here. Well, if it was their favorite visit so far, that's really changing the dynamic, and you want to back off of that a little bit.
I have a quick story to share that really speaks to not only my own experience as a mom in this college search, but remember how I was talking about your journey everyone being a little bit different. So my son, my older son, just graduated from college, but his very first visit was the sophomore year of high school. And I was like, all right, let's do this. Right here I am, the admissions director. I'm so excited. We're going to go and do this. So we go to his first open house, and the first session was great. They introduced the school. At the end of the first session, they say, okay, now students, please stand up, and you're going to go this way with the student panel. Parents and guardians, you please stand up. You're going to go this way with the faculty. Okay, go. Now my son is like 6'1", 6'2". He stood up and literally attached himself to me. Almost, literally I could see him as a toddler. He was so overwhelmed in that very moment. He said to me, when he looked at me, Mom, I don't want to do that. What do you mean you don't want to do that? You just stand up and you go that way, and I'm going to stand up and I'm going to go this way. And to me, it was no big deal. To him, it was overwhelming. It was overwhelming in that moment. He wasn't ready for it. And so I say this as maybe a caution to the parents that this really, again, is about your student. This is about their comfort level. This is about the experience maybe that they're looking to explore. Yes, parents, you want to make sure that you expose them to new things and to new experiences, but boy, did this feel like I was hitting a brick wall. I was like, wow, what did I just do? What did I just do to my son? I put him in this experience where he really wasn't ready for it. Now, again, you all are really excited. Ms. Hoyt just said, you're excited to use this time to go and explore, to see new schools, to see where you might fit. But sometimes it might not be the right fit, and you know it from the moment you walk onto campus, right? And it was a pretty easy thing for us to see in that moment. This was not the right fit for my son. He needed something that was much, much smaller and much more intimate. So back to what you said, Sarah, kind of knowing yourself, right? Know thyself, know what your needs are, and to the students, listen to your parents in that they want to help you and they want to support you, but parents also listen to your students. There are times where they really should be the ones driving. Let them drive this process.
So you might remember in college seminar, we had you fill out that value survey. What do you value in your community? That comment is exactly why we ask you those questions, and we talk to you about the type of community that is going to fit well with you. We, as college counselors, we don't really have a horse in the race in terms of where you end up, other than wanting to support you and finding a place where you're going to be successful and happy and excited to attend. So when we make recommendations for colleges for you to go and visit, and then you go and visit and you absolutely hate it, you will not offend a single one of us. We will not take it personally. We really want to know, okay, so you didn't like it. That's great feedback. Tell me why you didn't like it so we can look at the rest of your list, refine it, add other schools. I find oftentimes that students and parents, you're really, really good at identifying highly selective or brand name schools, and where we can come in and be helpful is thinking about your criteria and expanding that list further, right? And helping you find some places that you're going to be equally excited about that weren't already on your radar. And again, we really want to hear from you after you do those college visits. It's super important feedback because not only is that feedback allowing us to counsel you and provide guidance on future colleges that you might consider, but it's also giving us feedback on how you're thinking about your process and you're thinking about what you care about and what you're interested in is evolving with time, right? Because you might be listening to some of this and hearing, oh, now I need to figure out who I am and be more self-aware and what do I like and what do I value, and you don't have those answers quite yet. That's why you're going out and visiting places. That's why you're having conversations with us and conversations with your family and your close friends so that we can work with you on that. But it's really helpful to us as college counselors that you keep us in the loop with that because a lot is going to change from now until this time next year in terms of what those priorities and that criteria is. And we want to be along the way with you as that changes, right? Okay. All right, so we're going to then shift gears again to talk a little bit about things specific to Hill that impact our college process and how we do things here. So as you all know, we have a 12-school limit where we keep students to applying to 12 colleges and universities. This is something that we communicate to colleges. That is our policy and practice here at Hill, and we frequently, especially when we have advisory board members captive on our campus for 3 days, we talk to them about why we do this and ask for their feedback and thoughts on it. And so I'm going to open it up so that they can share their insights and you can hear a little bit about how colleges understand that policy. Does anyone want to start?
Yeah, I personally think it's great for a couple of reasons. One, there's so much focus on the decisions that we make when an application is submitted, but at the very beginning of this, you get to be selective. You are making the first choice, which is ultimately where you like to submit these applications. And I know for many of us and for many schools, especially selective schools, we're asking for extra essays and supplements and things that we're hoping you're going to spend a considerable amount of time with your research and putting together something thoughtful to demonstrate your fit and to put together the best possible application you can for that school. And if you're throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks, or you're applying to too many schools or things like that, I really do think, and I've seen data that backs some of this up, that your outcomes actually aren't as strong. Or you're not likely to be in one of the schools that was one of your top of your list or closer to it. And so that's how I see it. And so I'm all for, I think, again, being selective on the front end in terms of which schools you're applying to and building that list.
I look at it as intentionality, which is really important. So selfishly as an enrollment manager, I think about how am I enrolling the class size I've been asked to enroll each year. And you're likely hearing, all these schools with record applications, how do they keep getting more? It's because there are students who are being strategic about applying to the maximum number of schools they can. Well, this school doesn't use the Common Application, so I can apply there, and I'm going to max out my Common App schools, and I'm going to max out what I can do on another platform, and they're applying all over. But what that does is it dilutes your chances of enrolling them. So one of the things that I've always appreciated about Hill is when we get Hill applicants at Bucknell, I know you're actually really interested. Just the act of applying to Bucknell from Hill, and you do not have 20 or 30 applications out there. I know you're a serious applicant. I know if I admit you, I actually have a chance of getting you to enroll at my institution. Whereas I think in other instances, you hear these stories and I'm like, oh, I was one of 40 applications. I was never going to get that student. I was just kind of in the mix until they actually got everything. So that's one of the things I appreciate about the policy is that it really is helping you craft an intentional list that I think a lot of us know you're being very intentional about where you're applying, and we know that you're taking us seriously and helps us take you seriously.
Okay. All right, and then my last scanned question is, if you guys could talk about how you read, sometimes we get questions about the connections that Hill has or how you read Hill applicants versus applicants from other high schools. How do you think of us kind of in the context of all high schools?
Well, one of the first things I want to highlight that I think you really have to your benefit is we review applicants from Hill is that you do have a college counseling team that is taking the time to do what we're doing right now. Over the course of these days, we do things like tear apart and look at your school's profile from the lens of college admission officers and talk to your counseling team about it. What are we seeing that really helps us? What do we need to know that we can't find? You've got a team that's being really, really intentional about that and taking the time to think about those things critically to make sure that the materials that they are supporting you and putting forward to folks like ourselves are tailored to what we need. Because at the end of the day, our goal is to be able to see each student again within the context of their community. But I can tell you, communities do highly variable jobs of empowering us to be able to do that. And we sometimes have to work a lot harder to be able to do that. I know when I see an applicant from Hill, I'm not going to have to work harder to be able to do that. Hill is empowering me with the information I need to be able to understand the context of your academic experience in a deep way, but also in a really accessible way.
I think I would just add to the commitment that your community has to one another is really, really impressive. And just in the time that we all have been here, again, your faculty that we've spoken to, your peers, other students that we've spoken to, knowing that each of you, regardless of which college campus you land on, you are going to be incredible community members because it's important to you now, and you and your families chose Hill for a reason. That is going to continue literally with you for life. And so knowing that as I'm at Lafayette and I'm reviewing a Hill applicant, I know the quality of the student that I'm getting academically, but just the quality of the human that I'm getting as well, right? You are, many of you, living in a residence facility, right? You're living in a residence hall with your peers. You are engaging at seated dinner together. You are at chapel together, right? There's so many things that bring you all together. And we were just even impressed this morning at breakfast, and we were talking about how wonderful it was to see all of you just chatting, just talking to one another. You know, can't tell you the number of times we've walked into schools and we see students just on their phones, or we see students who are kind of isolated off by themselves. Those things matter, right? Those interactions, those engagements that you're having with each other matter. They matter because any one of you could walk up here right now and engage in a meaningful conversation with any one of us. Quite honestly, there are lots of high school students that can't do that, and they have a really hard time engaging with adults. And to your point, they don't always come up to the desk. Come up to the desk, right? Come and engage with us. We love that about this community, and we love that you're a part of those experiences, because again, we know that as roommates on our college campuses, as community members engaged in co-curriculars, right, that you are going to find meaningful engagement not only in the classroom with your faculty, but also outside of the classroom. I mean, look at this amazing set, right? We were talking about this before we got started. The number of you that are athletes, that are musicians, whatever it is that are your passions, we know that that's going to continue on our campuses. So keep at it. Good work.
I'll just add one thing that it's an unfortunate fact, which is that education in the United States and globally is not created equal. It's just the reality of our system. Public schools are not funded the same way. We've got our independent schools like Hill. So the reality is that when I'm selecting the class, and then applications. Schools like Hill just have a deeper bench for me. I just know that. The preparation, the rigor of the academics. Does it mean I take every single senior? I don't know. I don't know if I could do that. But I think the point I'm making is that I do know that there are schools where I may only realistically be able to have 4 or 5 viable students at that entire senior class. This is a place where I know there's a large percent of this like sixth form each year that would do amazingly well at Bucknell. And I think that's just the reality that we face as admission officers, knowing the different communities we're recruiting from, is that it just isn't going to be the same everywhere. And I think the benefit that I know of visiting here and getting to know Hill over the years I've been at Bucknell is I just know you all are really well prepared for a place like mine.
Okay. All right, we have a little bit of time left, and I might need some logistic help from a college counselor, but I will open it up just for a couple of questions. If one of the college counselors can come up and grab one of the mics. Yeah. All right. Just raise your hand if you have a question. There we go.
Hi, my name is Noah. I was wondering what's the most unique essay you've ever read?
The most unique.
It's funny, we were doing an essay sort of panel with some of your peers last night that are going to be ready tutors. And we were talking a little bit about this. And sometimes the most memorable essays can just kind of be a slice of life. They don't have to be the most like incredible experience. So for example, the essay that has stuck with me the most over the years was a student that wrote about their elementary school bus driver. And I've got to say, for the first 80% of the essay, I had no idea where this was going. I'm reading it, and it's like, this is great, I love your bus driver, I'm going to admit your bus driver, why are you telling me about your bus driver? But then the student wrapped it all up at the end by sharing how all of these moments of small acts of kindness that their bus driver has shown over the years taught them how important a small act of kindness can be in somebody's life. And that was something that they were now trying to pay forward because they recognized that those little things could change somebody's day. And let me tell you, by the end of reading that essay, it was like, I want you in one of my dorms. I need to have you in the community. So sometimes it can just be that small slice of life that can be really memorable.
I mean, like Justin, I think mine, it's more ordinary topics that I think I remember. I worked at a school before Bucknell that was very outdoorsy. And I remember a student writing about like going canoeing at 5 o'clock in the morning and watching the sunrise off the lake and how the moss was under their feet. And I was just like, you're perfect for this. I mean, it was one of those things where I said, this student just sharing this story, I think they were intentional about applying to the school I was working at the time, but it aligned really well. I also remember one more recently where a young man wrote about like a summer vacation he took every year with his parents and grandparents, and this like family card game they played. And similarly to what Justin was saying, it was one of those things where like each person in the family kind of helped create who he was. And he tied it in beautifully because he involved other people that made him about himself. That's, I think, one of the key elements. But I hope what you're picking up from some of what we're saying is we're not talking like a student who like cured a disease. Like that's not the level at which we need to like, well, that's what I remember. It's some of these more ordinary things that I think have really showed us who the person is behind the paper or behind the screen. And we're like, oh my gosh, I get this person now. And I think they'd be really great here.
Hi, my name's Slater. I just want to thank you guys for coming here tonight and taking your time to speak with us. And my question is, I'm a student who recently came back from a semester program, and I'm just wondering how colleges use semester programs and how that might impact the college process.
Take a start. So I think that's fantastic that you had that experience, and maybe there are others in the audience that have as well. And we will see that as part of your trajectory in high school in terms of the semester that you took away from Hill and what you were doing during that time and what the nature of your kind of academic program was while you were away. So I think we see it as part of the whole story that we would look at when we're reviewing your application. And it's important to share a little bit about what led you to that experience, what you were sort of seeking when you sought that out, what the experience was like, what you felt you gained from it. Knowing that that was part of your time in high school that is going to look a little bit different from the equivalent semester that you would have spent here at Hill. So we look at it from a place of this is your student experience. We want to be sure that we're understanding it in its completeness and see it as positive as it was for you as a learner, and hopefully what you gained positively from that experience. And I'm just going to kind of extrapolate your question out a little bit more broadly to any of you in the audience who may have had experiences or events or circumstances that might be a little different from sort of the norm, or that might maybe need or want or benefit from a little additional context or explanation. And we certainly invite you not to shy away from sharing that in the application. And there are parts of the application, one of the sections is quite literally titled additional information, and that is a great place to put any additional information that you want to share, whether it is around an academic experience, a semester abroad program, another kind of circumstance that might have arisen that impacted your experience in a certain way. So just know that it's our job to take in and understand what you're presenting to us, whether it's a semester abroad, whether it's anything else that was a part of your experience in high school.
I'm curious, as college admission officers, when you review students' applications, will you talk to the student's high school college counselor regarding the student qualifications? How will that impact either increase or decrease the student chance of getting admitted?
So there's a time limitation, I would say, to each of our offices. Most of us require a counselor recommendation letter, and that is going to be your counselor's opportunity to speak directly to the members of our committee on behalf of your student, to describe their academic journey, what kind of community member they've been, any context around their journey through the Hill School. I won't say that we never have an opportunity to have a conversation with a counselor, but we don't have the time to do it regularly. So I would say for the most part, that advocacy takes the form of that counselor recommendation, and not necessarily face-to-face or over the phone or over Zoom. Kind of back and forth conversations. Again, there are always exceptions. There are times that we might be able to have a conversation, but it's typically the counselor letter.
Yeah, and the benefit of, college counseling, we are regularly connecting with admissions counselors outside of talking about a specific student, but really in order to understand what's happening on their side, within their institutions, what they are experiencing, but sort of looking for how the different parts of their process works in order for us to be able to provide the best advice and the most current advice that we can. And we are very aware and sensitive to the ways in which they are asking for application materials, both from the students and from us, and what works in their process and honoring what they want and when they want it. And that doesn't always take the form of a phone call to talk about a specific applicant. It takes the form of the letters, or it takes the form of conversations ahead of time to understand their process, or conversations afterwards to hear about what were the trends that happened this year. And that is really helpful advice that actually impacts all of those students and not just one or two students.
Hi, my name is Juliana. Thank you for coming out and explaining this to all of us. I wanted to know how the different types of applications we choose to apply with, such as like regular decision and early action and ED, and basically how that will affect our application, and if we were to apply ED1 versus or ED2 versus ED1, if you guys consider that, knowing that we chose to ED2 after ED1.
Sure. So there's a lot of different plans out there. You already have some of the terminology, of course. Early decision, 1 or 2 are binding options. Early action and regular decision for schools that have those are generally non-binding. And there's early action, restrictive or single choice, non-binding, but you can only apply to that one school. At UChicago, we have early action, early decision 1, early decision 2, and regular decision. Yes, the admit rates are different between them, and which is based on a couple of different factors. Our binding routes, so early decision 1 and 2, higher admit rate, much smaller pool of students. Students are committing to attend, so there's benefits for the students and for the college in terms of understanding how we're building our class. When and how you apply to an institution is likely based on where is that school on your list, how ready are you to apply, what are the questions you need to be asking, and conversations having with your family about the financial impact and implications and what you need to be looking for there. For the specific question of ED1 versus ED2, for the students who come to us, ED2, I'm not automatically making the assumption that we're just the second choice, but I know that this is the time when the student knows, whatever reason, they realize this is where UChicago is where they'd like to be. And I'm not too worried about what happened in December, whether it was a different decision from a different school, or this is the first time you're applying, it just took you till this time to find us. So that's not a major concern for me. Early decision 2 for us or other schools is when it's right for you to apply to that specific institution. Great. And if your journey leads you to be looking for more non-binding options to get decisions back and compare some more things, that might be part of your journey as well.
I'm just going to add, to be transparent, that the difference between ED1 and 2 is by ED2 there are seats that are already filled in our class. So when I think about, my class target for next fall is 1,060 first-year students at Bucknell. When we're in early decision 1, we have 0 out of 1,060, and we have a bunch of people telling us that it's their top choice, they'd love to be at Bucknell. So I'm gonna be pretty generous in that round because I'm like, they're excited about us. If they're great applicants, we're excited about them. We fill seats. When we get to early decision 2, students are still really excited, and I'm glad they're really excited. The reality is that their space is already gone, right? So I have to then think about how much more room do I want to give away in another early round versus keeping some seats open in regular decision. So it is a little bit of frankly, it's just math a little bit in terms of I'm starting to zero out how I get to my final number. And based on what happened in that first round can impact the second round because of what I see year to year.
And how a college uses ED to fill their class or how much of their class they use really depends institution by institution. It is helpful to you when looking at Maya. You can look at our scattergrams and get an understanding, and because you can just look at the scatter plots just for ED or just for RD or EA, and you'll get a sense of the impact that ED has per institution. From the context of Hill, right? We will also, after spring break, be introducing you to a platform called College Kickstart, and that will give you even more data about how not only Hill students have fared at different colleges, but also nationally how students fare at those institutions and the impact of early decision versus regular decision, and that can be really helpful and informative. Let's do just one last question if there is anybody with a burning final question. No? Okay. Excellent. Well, I do want to say two thank yous. One, thank you to all of you for your excellent attention, really thoughtful questions, much appreciated, and an enormous thank you to our panelists. Not only, yes. Not only for their transparency tonight and their willingness to answer all of the questions, but also for the time that they've spent here these 3 days. They represent just excellent partners to Hill, and it's just deeply appreciated. All right, thank you everyone. We appreciate you coming out.
Thank you.